conversation explores the art of thinking beyond the obvious. And today I have my special guest. One of his advocacy helping healthcare leaders build profitable practices without burnout, no other than Mr. Daniel Neissany.
Good to be here.
Welcome, Mr. Daniel. And can you please introduce more like yourself that I missed?
Yes, I have hazelnut eye color. Yeah, so I guess a little background. I have my doctorate in physical therapy and practiced for about 13 years. Moved out of the practicing space in 2022 when I moved from New Jersey to Las Vegas. And then since then, just building up a healthcare consulting company to help other practices, improve their revenue and just really conquer a lot of the challenges that we're facing in the healthcare landscape in the United States.
Hmm. Very well said. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world, Mr. Dan. Thank you. And today let's talk about practice growth without burnout. Growth without burnout sounds like a modern day unicorn for many professionals. Why has this combination become so elusive, and what fundamental misconception about growth often leads to directly to burnout?
Yeah, a lot of it. So first and foremost, I'm going to always go right to the person who's in charge, which are, your owners, founders, leaders. I really feel for any company, that's where the standard starts. So it's up to those people that are in the positions where they're starting a practice to identify what can we put in place now that is going to help us as we grow. And that's one of the biggest mistakes in aspect misconceptions is that people think, well, I don't need it right now because we're not very profitable or we're not very large. I don't need systems. I don't need processes, protocols built out until we're already busy. And then when that time does come, it's darn near impossible to actually do because you're just too busy now in actual business. So really the way I look at it is that A, you start with leadership, understanding what kind of organization you want to actually have. And then B, the aspect of growing without burnout or without chaos, it really comes down to what kind of systems you have in place. And this is not just one or two systems, but really making sure that you have all the crucial aspects of running an organization really laid out, that it's teachable and that people can learn it really quick. And to your point about burnout and chaos, usually it just happens because you get busy and you don't have any systems. So everything is you do a lot of the same tasks over and over again, but you make a lot of mistakes. It's a lot of repeatable work that you have to do. So that's really how I look at it: is start with the leaders and then build out the systems.
Very well said, Mr. Don. Let's diagnose the early warning signs. Beyond just feeling tired, and what are the subtle, often ignored indicators that professionals' hustle for growth is actually starting to undermine their long term capacity and well being?
Yeah, really like that question. One of the biggest indicators is the ability to make decisions, which it's hard enough. There's obviously enough pressure on people who are proverbially in charge to make decisions that are going to affect a company, whether it's 5 employees or 500 employees. What you do day to day affects other people, and when we start seeing those decisions being impeded, or maybe the decision making process, what might have taken somebody a few minutes is now taking them hours, or what used to take them hours is now taking them days. And it's just simply because they don't have the mental bandwidth. You talked about it's just it's definitely more than just being tired. I think we're all of us for the most part, we experience being tired on some level almost every single day. But it's just that exhaustion where you can't think clearly. Energy level is extremely low no matter what. Talking no matter how much rest or how much caffeine you ingest. It's just a full-on level of exhaustion. And then what it really you start seeing is a level of where people used to have passion, the passion is starting to slip. Those are all indicators that somebody is most likely already reached the level of burnout. And at this point, we're not talking about prevention, we're talking about recovery. So it's really going to be important when we talk about the burnout aspect is what do I see before I get to that point where I'm already burned out? And this is, really where we're talking about having, being on all the time mentally and just not being able to see away from business, being able to, again, make decisions. And then really a big one is your emotional state, right? And that's one I think we've all experienced where, maybe you're tired and you start getting a little bit more hot tempered or, you lose your cool, so to speak. So that's one thing that I talk to business owners is, do you notice your own emotional state starting to change? And if you are, if you can't, you're not your normal happy self, or you're not your normal person that's even keeled and level, that's a definite sign that you're starting to wear yourself out and we need to take some action.
You talk about sustainable peace or pace, I should say. How do you help someone differentiate between the necessary temporary intensity of a launch or a deadline and a
Yeah.
business model that is fundamentally unsustainable?
Yeah, right. Because we've all been there. I got to work really hard to launch. I mean, even currently, I'm my wife. She's building up a business, and she's just working nonstop. All nighters and what have you. So there's this aspect though that we don't attach any sense of a timeline. Number one, so somebody just says I have to do this and I have to work really hard, but then that project turns into another project, or this business then turns into another business. So it's really having a defined timeline on when you can, when you're going to dedicate that much intensity and energy to it. But then the other aspect is that you do have those business owners who are going to say, well, that's just the way I work and I'm going to do that no matter what. What's going to be really imperative for that person then is you can work that hard, but are you building out any time to recover? Meaning it's not just, you want to talk about self-care, it's you doing anything to actually give your brain and your body time to rest. And I think the perfect example would be, I look at Olympic athletes, for instance, they don't train all the time, right? They give themselves rest. The nutrition's on point. They're helping their body heal. So the way I was like, if they can do it, we can do it as human beings. So you have to build out those. I talk about systems, building out systems for recovery. So that way, if you say, hey, I want to work 60 or 70 or 80 hours a week, you can do it and not actually get to a point where you've built out and launched that product, as you say, and then you end up so exhausted that you can't even enjoy the process and you can't even enjoy the fruits of your own labor.
Let's talk about the foundation and mindset and metrics. Much burnout stems from our metrics for success. So, how do you guide a professionals to redefine their personal or professional scorecard away from vanity metrics like revenue or a follower count and toward indicators of sustainable health?
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's one of the first questions I ask anybody is what's your definition of success? To your point, it could be somebody could say, well, I need to make $5 million a year and have 10% body fat. The next person might just say, I want to make maybe $200,000, but I want to have time to go to the sauna and dinners with my wife and kids every night. So it's important for people to understand what does success actually look like for them. And one of the things I take them through when I'm having these discussions is I like using a tool called the Wheel of Life, which is basically going to break down, how are you doing financially? How are you doing spiritually, relationships, health? It really encompasses every major aspect of life. And it really helps people identify, all right, from 0 to 10, how would I grade myself? Right. So maybe I'm a 9 out of 10 in my business, but then I'm a 2 out of 10 in my relationships. And it's really helping people understand when we get into these positions, whether it's leading and managing or it's actually owning and founding a company, it's why did you go down that pathway to begin with? Why did you start the business, or why did you want to run an organization? And you do get some people that say, well, I want to make money, but most often than not, I wanted freedom, or I wanted, time to spend with my friends and family. And then they quickly realize I'm not even doing that. I've actually built something that I've become a prisoner of. So it's helping people really evaluate what are the important things in life, how much, not even time, but how much intentional energy am I directing towards those aspects of my life? And am I really focusing on the things that are important long term? Or I think you used a great word to just focus on the vanity. So it's really, that's definitely one of the major things I start with when I'm working with people for sure.
Very well said, Mr. Dan. The hero complex is a real service based field. How does the identity of being the only one who can do it or hardworking expert sabotage efforts to grow without burning out?
Yeah, I mean, you you said right there the hero complex. So we think we have to do everything ourselves. A lot of us anyway. But the smart individuals, again, when you focus on why you're either starting or running a business, I really don't think there's really not too many people out there say I want to start something that is gonna take more time away from me, and at the beginning stages, I'm gonna make less than I did when I worked for another company or organization. I don't think there's anybody sane who would say that. So it's being able to not focus on ego, and not really focus on how many hours or how many tasks am I doing to make myself feel better so I can tell somebody else like yourself, hey, I'm working 7 hours a week and I do 20 things a day. It's what are we really focused on and what's the outcome that we're actually going after? And that's where, again, I really go back to basics with somebody and say, what's the desired result or outcome that we're actually chasing here? And what's the emotional reason that that's the outcome you want to have? And then we look at what actions need to take place to make that outcome a reality. So if we look at, you have 20 things that you're doing every single day, how many of those things are just BS ancillary tasks that you could delegate to somebody else? Now, you had mentioned it in the sense of that person who's maybe by themselves, or if they're a solopreneur, or it's just maybe them and one employee. There's a lot of resources we have nowadays that you can leverage, whether it's using VAs, using AI in the right fashion. So there are other resources that we can use that will take energy and tasks, things away from us that really don't serve us, and will allow us to actually function at a high level long term versus getting to that point where you're just exhausted, tired, stressed, and maybe burned out, and then you just don't even want to actually run the business anymore, and you end up potentially even selling it.
Indeed. So let's talk about the strategic focus, Mr. Dan. A major stressor is a feeling pulled into many directions for growth. What is your process for helping someone identify the one or two growth activities that will yield 80% of the results and give themselves the permission to ignore the rest?
Yeah, that's an important one. Is what are the one or two things that I can focus on that's going to help me get most of my growth? Really, what this boils down, at least for me, is understanding who are we actually trying to serve. And I always start with that just simply because you come across a lot of businesses and they're either, if they're in the beginning stages, they actually don't have a clear identity of who they want to serve, meaning what kind of patients or what kind of clients or customers. And then even for the experienced companies, a lot of people they end up having some misdirection, and their messaging changes a little bit, and they end up not actually serving their original client or patient, end up going in a different direction. So it's really helping people understand who's the ideal person that we're speaking to. And then number two really is understanding what are they actually looking for. So, a good example of that would be, if I was going maybe to a doctor's office, and let's just say, or maybe it's a chiropractor's office, the major thing would be, all right, what is your actually demographic of people that you're serving, number one. And then it would not make any sense for that provider to bring on a service, maybe hire a medical doctor or maybe a podiatrist, somebody like that, and none of their patients even want that service, right? So that's why I keep it very basic and simple. And it's understanding that usually the simple things are what gets us the 80%. It's just knowing what our clients and customers want from us and how to actually best make that happen.
So, Mr. Dan, the leap from practitioners to CEO of your practice is a major burnout chasm. What is the first most critical system or process solo professionals should build or document to begin creating a leverage and space for themselves?
The biggest mistake I would say is we think, well, we tend to think that what works in one role will work in the next role, meaning as you put it, this is how I worked as a clinician, and then I'm going to go to that CEO role or the ownership role, and I'm going to think that I can act exactly the same way. And we have to understand, and this is what most people just end up struggling with, even when they're not in a CEO role. It's just maybe somebody getting promoted to management or a director role. It's they don't have the skills necessary because there's a big difference when you're essentially working not for yourself, but it's you working with other patients. Now, when you're actually starting to lead and manage other people, the expectations are a lot different, and that's where a lot of people they don't have the skills. So I would just really the best thing I always recommend is start developing the necessary skills for the role that you actually want to be in. So if I want to be an owner, I need to start educating myself on what skills do I need to have to be an owner. This is not really a position where you can learn on the fly. I mean, you're gonna do that, but if you take too long and you experience too much pain, there's only so much failure you can have as an owner before your business actually legitimately fails. So you have to start preparing for the role that you want before you actually have the role.
So, Mr. Dan, the long game, integration, and legacy. How do you reframe non work time like vacation, sabbaticals, or unplugged weekends from being a reward for a growth to being a non negotiable input that fuels innovation and resilience?
So if I hear you correctly, it's just how to essentially taking some breaks, feed the innovation.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
this is something that I struggle with, not in being able to answer the question, but actually taking my own advice. So we often think that we have to just be in work mode, and when you're building a business, it definitely your new habit can be work. And quickly again you realize you have no free time to really do much of anything. That's why when somebody says, "I don't have 10 minutes a day," it, I'm really concerned for that person. So you have to not only just make it a priority. It's very easy to say that, but we have to understand what things like whether it's just taking a rest, going on vacation, and completely separating yourself from the business, taking a sabbatical. We have to understand what do those things represent and what does it actually allow us to accomplish when we're not in the business day in and day out. And the way I stress this to people is just even on a daily basis, giving yourself some time to just think. That's one aspect of society that, and I find myself doing the same thing too. It's just you get so used to constantly trying to keep your brain busy, whether it's work, your phone, social media, whatever it may be, that we've lost the ability to actually just think and self-reflect. And that's where some of the biggest breakthroughs and the biggest innovations come not from a busy brain, not from one that's distracted and overworked. The best innovations always come from a clear brain and a clear thinking process. So when I look at innovation compared to rest, I don't see how you could innovate without actually giving yourself some rest time and some room and time away from work.
Well, very well said, Mr. Dan. And what are your short term and long term goals?
Short-term goal would be really two things for actually, I mean, I got a lot, but when it comes to the business, my business partner and myself are launching a healthcare business membership in the next few weeks, a few months, give or take. So our goal is to really just help more healthcare practice owners grow their business without the stress and the anxiety that is really pervasive now in healthcare. So that's definitely one. I'm actively searching to buy a business. Long-term goals for myself at least is to start a nonprofit personal development center for children. That's definitely a big one for me. And honestly, personal goal too I got one set for this year is to actually learn my dad's native language of Farsi, aka Persian. So that's some goals for myself.
Well, good luck to your goals, Mr. Dan. I'm looking forward for more success. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there who want to be like you?
Piece of advice for people who want to be like me: don't be like me, be like yourself. um, Find what works for you. Follow your own path. I think that's what's worked for me is seeing what other people are doing and borrowing the ideas that are working for them and adapting it to my own style. So not, I know the biggest mistakes I've made are trying to be somebody or be somebody else. So it's being true to who you are, and then just realizing that if you want growth, you have to put the work in. That's the biggest, I think that's the number one piece of advice I give to anybody is nobody is going to do the work for you when it comes to improving yourself, your skills, your knowledge. You have to do that. And if you want to be in a position where you're, I look at everybody as having the ability to be a leader, whether you're running a family, you're married, you have children, you're running a department. Leadership for me is huge because I feel like we all just have it within us, and the world would be a better place if we were better leaders. So it's starting with yourself and knowing what do I need to do to improve that I can help other people.
For that. Thank you for that advice, Mr. Dan. And to wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in sixth season, abstract poetry in third season, and my book 101 review and sixth season as well. Comedy 101 third season, and my food 101 in sixth season as well. Geography 101 love letters, movie 101 review, music 101 are in fifth season. Science 101, Sex 101, fourth season, Spiritual Awakening, Trivia 101, Law 101, Mental Health 101, Motivation 101, Entrepreneurship 101, and of course, Bible Verses 101 are my baby podcasts. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Dan, finally paint the picture of the alternative victory. What does a winning look like at the peak of a career built on sustainable growth? How does it feel different than the traditional burnout success story?
Do you feel, it's really easy, do you feel fulfilled? Do you wake up every day filled with purpose and passion, that's irrespective of your bank account? That's what I would say. If right now I'm making less revenue than I had in the past, and I would say I feel significantly more successful and 100% fulfilled compared to where I was prior. So that's a big one. Is just, do you feel fulfilled? Do you Are you doing something that speaks to your actual purpose? And if not, find it.
Find it. Find it, people, because for sure is all it's just only on the corner. So please chase your dream and stop procrastinating and
That's
share
it.
to the world. So, Mr. Dan, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Can you say it one more time?
Can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your
Yeah, just
business?
I'd love if you can visit the website, evpstrategies.com. Check me out on LinkedIn, and then we're here to help businesses grow. And I think that's the best way I can put it. Is just if you want to help an organization out, book a call. Love to see what we can do to help you out.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Dan, because if you support him, for sure more and more advocacy like this to rise. So, Mr. Dan, thank you so much for your time.
Yes, sir. I appreciate having me on.
Likewise. More come, people. See you soon.